This is something my dad told me when I was a kid. We were sitting around a campfire one night, just talking, nothing scary, nothing serious. The fire was crackling, bugs buzzing in the distance, and somehow the conversation drifted into stories. That's when he told me this. My dad grew up dirt poor, like really poor. Vacations weren't a thing for his family. The only place they ever went was his cousin's house once a year. That house sat in the middle of nowhere. No neighbors, no street lights, just miles of cornfields stretching in every direction. He said the corn grew so tall it blocked out the sky in places. During the day it felt isolating. At night it felt suffocating. When my dad was about 8 or 9, he was visiting during the summer. One afternoon he was sitting outside with his cousin Jason, cracking walnuts on the porch steps. No adults were around. His mom and aunt were inside cooking. His dad and uncle were out back setting up the barbecue. That's when Jason leaned over and said, "Hey, wanna see something?" My dad asked him what he meant. Jason just smiled and said, "Come on, follow me." They walked straight into the cornfield. And that's important, because they'd been told over and over never to go in there, not to play, not to explore, not for any reason. The corn swallowed them almost immediately. Dad said the sound changed once they were inside. The wind didn't move the same way. Every step made the stalks scrape together, like whispering voices brushing past their ears. They walked for about 15 minutes before reaching a clearing. In the center of it was a large hill. On top of the hill sat several massive hay bales, lined up perfectly, like someone had taken the time to arrange them. Behind the hill were dense woods, dark, thick, untouched. Jason stopped and pointed toward them. He told my dad that a man had gone missing there, along with his dogs. It took weeks for police to find them. When they did, the man and his dogs were found hanging from a tall tree. Skin. Dad thought Jason was messing with him. He laughed and said, "You bring me all this way just to scare me?" Jason shook his head. "No, just watch." Before my dad could stop him, Jason ran up the hill and shoved one of the hay bales out of place. Then he sprinted back down into the corn. "Get down," Jason whispered urgently. They crouched low, peering through the stalks. That's when my dad saw it. Something stepped out of the woods. He said it was tall, way too tall. 8, maybe 9 feet. Its body was impossibly thin, like it hadn't eaten in years. Its arms hung too long at its sides. Its fingernails were filthy and stretched out far past its fingers. But the worst part was its eyes. They weren't just black, they were empty, like holes. No reflection, no life. The thing walked slowly to the hill, picked up the hay bale, and put it back exactly where it had been, like it was fixing something that mattered to it. Then it turned and walked back into the woods. Dad was shaking. He whispered to Jason, "What the hell was that?" Jason just said, "We don't know." Then, against all common sense, Jason grinned. "I'm gonna do it again." Before my dad could stop him, Jason ran up the hill and pushed the hay bale out of place again. They hid and waited. This time, it didn't come out quietly. The woods erupted with this shriek. Dad said it sounded like a dying bird mixed with a screaming woman. High-pitched, broken, wrong. The thing burst from the trees. It didn't walk this time. It charged. It grabbed the hay bale and threw it. Not rolled it, not dragged it. It threw it. A 500-pound hay bale flew through the air like a football and slammed into the ground just feet from where my dad was hiding. Jason's face went white. The thing stood there, head twitching, listening, searching. That's when they realized it knew they were there. They ran. Dad said he didn't even feel his legs. They crashed through the corn, stalks slicing their arms, breath burning in their chests. They didn't stop until they reached the house. Their parents were waiting, furious. Jason lied, said they got lost playing hide and seek. They were yelled at and sent to the guest room until dinner. Neither of them said a word. Dad told me that every time they looked out the window toward the cornfield, they swore they saw movement, watching. When my dad finished telling the story, I asked him if it was true. He didn't hesitate. He said it was. Maybe it was just a story meant to scare a kid by a campfire. Or maybe whatever lived in that cornfield is still there, waiting for someone to step out of line again. I've had strange experiences my entire life, paranormal things. things I still don't have explanations for. I come from a long line of witches, and not the aesthetic kind. Some of them were powerful. Some of them practiced baneful magic. That kind of history tends to follow you whether you want it to or not. I could tell dozens of stories, honestly, but this is the one that has stayed with me the most. When I was around 7 or 8 years old, my family lived in this small 2-bedroom house. It was old, quiet, and constantly felt wrong. Like the air inside was heavier than it should have been. Outside we'd find strange things. Not junk, not animal remains, human bones. When my sister and I found them, we were curious. Kids usually are. But my dad got angry in a way I'd never seen before. He told us to put them back exactly where we found them and never touch them again. No explanation, just fear in his voice. I've always had trouble sleeping, even back then. Most nights, I'd lie awake until the early morning hours, listening to the house settle, floorboards popping, distant pipes knocking, shadows stretching across the walls as cars passed outside. One night, around 2 or 3 in the morning, I was awake like usual. All my siblings were asleep. Most of them were on the top bunk. I was on the bottom bunk with one of my sisters. The room was dark, quiet, still. Then my dad appeared in the doorway. He didn't say my name. He didn't turn on the light. He just stood there and motioned for me to come with him. Something about it felt strange immediately. My dad was normally talkative, especially with us kids, but he didn't speak at all. I got up. I don't know why. I just did. I followed him into the living room. He sat down on the couch and patted the cushion next to him, signaling for me to sit. Again, no words, just gestures. The TV was already on. Some late-night program was playing quietly, casting this pale blue glow across the room. I sat next to him and stared at the screen, trying to focus on whatever was on, but I could feel him watching me, not glancing, not casually looking, staring. I slowly turned my eyes toward him, and that's when I noticed something was wrong. His eyes were completely black, not dark brown, not shadowed, black. No whites, no reflection, no light at all. My stomach dropped. I felt this deep, crawling unease, like my body knew something my mind couldn't accept yet. I forced myself to look back at the TV, but I could still feel his gaze burning into the side of my face. At one point, he placed his hand on my knee. That wasn't normal for him, not something he ever did. His hand felt cold, not just cool, cold, like it had no warmth in it at all. I sat there for maybe 30 minutes. It felt like hours. Finally, I told him I wanted to sit on the love seat instead. He didn't respond verbally, just nodded. After another 10 minutes of sitting there in silence, barely breathing, I said I was going back to bed. That's when he motioned for me to come give him a hug. I did. He hugged me tightly, kissed me on the cheek, and again, I noticed how cold he was. Not just his hands, his whole body. I walked down the hallway toward my room, but instead of turning in, I walked toward my parents' bedroom. I needed to know. I peeked inside. My dad was there, asleep, next to my mom, both of them breathing peacefully. My blood ran cold. I stood there for a moment, staring, until something moved in my peripheral vision. I turned around. It was standing directly in front of me, 2, maybe 3 inches from my face. It was wearing my dad's face, but now I could see it clearly. The eyes were huge, black, empty, unblinking. Its expression was frozen, wrong, like a mask stretched over something that didn't belong in it. I was paralyzed. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. For about 30 seconds, it just stared into my eyes. Then it straightened up, and that's when I realized how tall it really was. Much taller than my dad, closer to 7 feet. It turned, walked past me, through the living room, and into the kitchen. I don't remember walking back to my room. I just remember forcing my eyes shut and pretending to sleep. Years passed. I thought maybe it was a dream, until it happened again. I was about 10 years old. We had moved into a larger apartment. My grandmother was babysitting me that day. I walked out of my parents' bathroom and saw her sitting at the computer in their bedroom. The screen was on. I could hear typing. I was about to walk past her, until I glanced toward the living room. My grandmother was asleep on the couch. I froze. Slowly, I turned back. It was standing right next to me, leaning forward, staring into my eyes. The same face-wearing thing, the same black eyes. It watched me for about 15 seconds. Then it turned, sat down in the computer chair, and began typing again, like nothing had happened. I walked out of the room and sat beside my grandmother, listening to her breathe. After a couple minutes, I went back. The room was empty. I've never seen it again. I don't know why it chose me, or why it wore the faces of people I trusted most. But I know one thing. Whatever it was, it knew exactly what it was doing. I live with my mom and my sister in a small village in Germany. It's the kind of place most people don't even notice on a map. Narrow roads, old houses, almost no traffic. Our home sits between dense forests and wide, empty fields that stretch into the valley. At night, the village goes completely dark, most windows unlit, the streets silent. The quiet here isn't peaceful. It's heavy, like something pressing in on you from all sides. My dad left when I was only a year old, so it's always just been the three of us. I grew up surrounded by trees and fields, and maybe because of that, I've always believed in the paranormal. When you live somewhere this isolated, every strange sound feels closer, sharper, harder to ignore. But what happened recently felt different. It felt personal. About 2 months ago, my sister asked me something completely out of the blue. She asked if I believed in skinwalkers or wendigos. At first, I laughed it off. I thought she'd been watching too many horror videos online. But when I asked her why, her expression changed. She told me she and my uncle had heard screams coming from the forest. Not foxes, not deer, nothing normal. She said they sounded almost human, but distorted, like someone trying to scream through broken speakers. That's when I stopped laughing. I asked my uncle about it later, expecting him to downplay it. Instead, he confirmed everything. The timing, the volume, how close it felt. He described how the sound echoed unnaturally, bouncing through the trees in a way that didn't make sense. He spoke calmly, casually. That scared me more than the scream itself. That night, I started researching. Reddit threads, folklore articles, old stories about creatures that mimic human sounds. I stayed up far too late, scrolling in the dark while the house slept. The more I read, the quieter my room felt. Weeks passed, and then Halloween came. My uncle suggested we walk into the forest at night. Not to hunt anything, just to listen. To prove to ourselves it was nothing. The moment we stepped between the trees, the atmosphere changed. The air felt heavier, colder. The forest was too still, like it was holding its breath. We hadn't been walking long when we heard it. A scream. Distant, warped, stretched in a way that made my stomach twist. It almost sounded human, but not quite. Like something imitating a voice without understanding it. My heart started pounding, but we kept walking. Then my uncle did something that still makes my skin crawl when I think about it. He started whistling. A high, casual tune, like he was trying to prove he wasn't scared. The sound echoed through the trees in a way that felt wrong, too sharp, too clear. I told him to stop. I said he didn't know what he might be calling. He laughed nervously, and then the whistling stopped. So did everything else. No wind, no insects, no rustling leaves. The silence was suffocating. Then we heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate, not the uneven shuffle of an animal. Not hurried, not random. Something was moving through the forest, toward us. We didn't run. We just walked faster. Every instinct screamed at me not to turn around. The moment the village lights came into view, the pressure eased, but the feeling didn't leave. For weeks after that, I couldn't stop thinking about those footsteps. 2 months passed. Life went back to normal, or at least it pretended to. Then 2 days ago it happened again. My sister and I were walking to our grandmother's house along a narrow path that cuts between 2 wide, open fields. The forest sat far behind us, dark and distant. Normally, it feels harmless from that far away. That night it didn't. The sky faded from blue to black. Only a few weak streetlights glowed behind us. Ahead, the path disappeared into darkness. Without thinking, I started whistling, softly, absent-mindedly. The sound carried across the fields, and then the scream came, sharp, raw, unnatural. It echoed across the open space, rising and falling in a warped pitch. It sounded like an elk screaming, but twisted, stretched, wrong. My blood ran cold. My sister stopped walking. I didn't even have to look at her. We both knew. We didn't run. We walked fast, almost jogging. The streetlights ahead felt impossibly far away. The scream didn't come again, but its echo lingered, vibrating in my chest. When we reached the light, we stopped, gasping. The fields behind us were silent now, empty, black. We told our mom and grandmother what happened. They brushed it off. Probably a fox. Maybe a deer. I didn't argue, but I know those sounds. I've lived near forests my entire life. That was neither. Now, even during the day, the forest feels different. The shadows seem deeper, the trees darker. When I walk alone, I swear I can hear footsteps in my mind, slow, measured, matching my pace. The village is quiet. Life moves slowly here. But in the silence, I know something is still out there, listening, waiting, and I will never whistle at night again.